In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use an enhancement tool that I made for Black Desert Online. It calculates fail stacking strategies and enhancement strategies. I believe it can be useful for people who are learning and more experienced players who are going for bigger enhancements too. This is going to be a quick start guide to explain how to use the program and interpret the information that it calculates. I'm going to go through what I think is the most relevant to majority of people in the beginning of the video, and then go slightly more in depth as we progress. Hope it saves some time. The project is open source, and you can download the source code, binaries, and Python wheels from the link in the description. There's a Windows installer for people who don't want to deal with running the project from the code. I know that not a lot of people would use Python. Just check the releases section of the GitHub page for the most up-to-date version. First off, I want to thank all the people that have gotten in contact with me to give suggestions and help fix stuff. I've had people contact me through Discord and Reddit, things like that. Thank you so much. Big shout out to you guys. It's really helpful getting feedback from everyone else. Also, there's a couple of custom pieces of art. I think the Black Spirit pictures were made by my friend Locust here, who's goofing around on her new Doom horse. So thank you for that. All right, let's get started. The first screen that you're going to get opening the program is the Enhancement tab. You can see the tabs off to the left, and that's not where you start, but it's probably where you're going to want to start after you have all of your gear entered into the program. So first, just check the Money/Settings tab, and you can see the items here and what their price is in the program. You can update prices through the central market, but we'll get into that a bit later. There's also some settings here that aren't prices, like the number of quest fail stacks you can get from the Bartali adventure log, I think, and yeah, whatever. However many free fail stacks you get by default, just enter them there. Of course, the value pack and rich merchant's ring are self-explanatory. If you have them active, check the box. Next, you're going to want to go to your fail stack gear, and the first list is what's called your primary fail stack material. So this is going to be like your reblath or militia weapons. These are the items that you'll start fail stacking on when you're at your lowest fail stack level, and then eventually you're going to transition over onto the secondary list, and that's going to be pry, duo, try, tet, gruntle pieces, that sort of thing. So I'm going to add a militia weapon here, and when you add a new piece of gear and you see that magnifying glass type icon on it, you're going to want to click that so that you can open this add gear dialog, and then you can search for gear in the database and then find the piece that you're looking for and double click it to add it to the list. After you do that, set the base item cost. I'm not sure if that's the right base item cost, but I just picked one. And then you're going to want to set the enhancement target. So when you enter gear into the program, the level that you choose is the target level. So when I put 15 here, that means that I have a plus 14 militia weapon, and I'm going for 15, even though when you're fail stacking, you're not necessarily trying to get the enhancement. That's just how you enter gear into the program. So I'm going to add a secondary piece of gear here too. I'm going to go for another gruntle piece. And in this list, it's automatically going to start fail stacking at pry or target duo all the way up until pen. So it's going to use all the different levels of this piece of gear to calculate the cost of fail stacks using it. I'm going to update the prices of both of these using the marketplace, and that's going to set the base item cost. Should just be one piece of gear because I only entered one piece of gear that's on the marketplace. It'll also tell you if you should buy the pry or if you should just enhance it yourself, so it will use the marketplace value for that. And it's also going to get the cost of selling the item at pen. This is for the secondary gear, of course, so it'll put all of that data into the calculation if you can sell it on the market, that is. You can click the arrow off to the left-hand side of an item in the list to expand it, and then view its sub-items. The next step is to calculate the cost of your fail stacks. So there's two lists in this section. The first is the primary list. So this is going to display all of the fail stacks only using the primary gear. So this is kind of like the first step. And then the secondary list is going to take the primary list and decide where to start using the secondary items, and how many duos do you do, how many tries, how many tets, that sort of thing. So first we'll refresh this list to calculate the primary fail stack list. You'll see that there's a cost. So this is the cost for just that fail stack. So if you're looking at the 60th fail stack, the cost is going to be the difference between 59 to 60. A cumulative cost, which is the cost from 0 all the way up until that point. And of course, if you have quest fail stacks, they have 0 cost, so that's taken out. And then the probability and cumulative probability are the same thing, but they just tell you how likely you are to fail. So now we move on to the secondary list, and this is where it could get a little bit confusing. The problem of searching through all the different possibilities was something that I wasn't exactly sure how to do easily, so that's why this section is confusing. So to deal with that, there's basically an algorithm that's going to try out a bunch of different combinations of things and then find a cheap, viable solution. So right now I have 4 solutions here at the bottom left list, and 3 of them have a check mark next to them, which means that they're active. And that means when the program is calculating the fail stacking list cost, and when it's trying to calculate how to enhance your gear, it's going to use all 3 of those strategies and pick the best one depending on what piece of gear you're using. You're going to want to find solutions that are cheap and work for your gear. You can click the checkbox next to one of these solutions to plot them on the graph to the right. And this is mostly just used to compare solutions with each other. If you want to take a more in-depth look at what the cost curve looks like. You can click an item on the list at the bottom left to populate the list at the top. And the list at the top is just going to give you a breakdown at each level, how much it costs, and what to do. So it's very similar to the primary list, except it's not going to go up by 1, of course, because you're using pry to tet gear here. I would recommend the first time that you run the program, you should try and do this step, adding an optimizer. Basically what this does is you're prepping the system to calculate an optimal strategy for the gear that you entered. So if something like the price of Blackstones has changed quite a bit, or if you're using much different gear on your primary or secondary fail stack list, you're going to want to rerun the optimizer and find a strategy that works for your setup. You do this by right-clicking on the list and then select Add Optimizer, and then you can just hit Start Calculation to have the computer search through the solution space and then look for a good one. While it's running, you're going to see that graphs are going to start coming up on the left, and basically how this works is when it finds a solution that's better than what it previously thought was the best solution, it's going to graph it, and solutions that are older and thus less efficient are going to kind of like fade out. There's a maximum number of solutions that are going to be on this list, so it's not going to just spam the graph with a bunch of different curves. It doesn't take long to find a good solution, so I've tried running this for pretty long, and at the default settings it usually finds things pretty quick. So I'm going to stop this here. I'm pretty sure the solution that it found is good enough. It might not even find a better one than that. Now I'm just going to take a look at some of the different solutions that I found. The better ones are at the end of the optimizer list, and I'm going to compare that to the solution that I already had active, and it looks like it's a lot better than the one that I already had active, so I'm going to remove it. You can create a new group to help organize things here, and I'm just going to add a new group to put the new solution that I found in. I'm going to add it to the strategy too. You can double click on an item to rename the group, and then drag items into groups in order to manually organize them. I don't need the optimizer anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it, and then I'm going to plot the curve that I just generated and take a look at the strategy and the breakdown of cost. And then I'm going to right click and say use this solution to add it into the calculations of the program. That's it. That's all you have to do to calculate new strategies and then add them into the algorithms later. Not all of the solutions that you generate here are going to be at the program's maximum fail stack level. At default settings, the program stops at 300 fail stacks. And of course, that's so it doesn't just calculate things forever. So some of these solutions stop here at 125 and 100 fail stacks. You can set that later, but I'm going to go into how to tune the settings of the optimizer a bit later. 300 fail stacks actually ends up working for pretty much everything and everyone, so you don't necessarily have to micromanage that if you don't want to. The next section is the for-profit section. I've had some code in the past that handles this, but I'm reworking it, so right now it's disabled, and later on I'll probably put that back in. And then we get to the equipment tab. So this is where you're going to put in the equipment that you are looking to enhance. You're trying to enhance this equipment. It's not fail stacking equipment, of course, so now we're moving on to our actual target items. So I'm just going to add some gear here. And you click the magnifying glass again. When you add gear, it should have the right gear type, but just double check it, and you can use that combo box. If you click it, you can change the gear type from something like green armor to boss armor or accessories, whatever. You can take a look at the drop down list to see what types of gear are available in the program. So if I right click and I say marketplace update all, it's going to go to the marketplace and get the costs for all of these gear. You can do that in any of the lists that have gear that can access the marketplace. Just automatically updates the price. Then I'm going to set the target enhancement level. Again, remember this is the target, not its current enhancement level. You can see from the graphics on the right, when you take a look at the icon, that should look like the gear icon that you have in the game. So if you're going for a Tet Griffin helmet, it should be a try right now, like in the picture. And then you right click and say calculate all costs to get a breakdown of each level of the gear, how much it'll cost to get a successful enhancement, the probability of a successful enhancement, the number of fails, and the material cost is just how much it costs in, we'll say, like memory fragments and blackstones and stuff like that. It doesn't take into account the cost of generating the fail stack or generating any other fail stack that you would need should it downgrade. So if you're going for Tet, you might downgrade from try to duo, and then you have to get back to try, which will have a fail stack cost in it. Again, you can expand this gear to look at the different levels here. So if you're going for Tet, you might go all the way back down to Pry. So Pry, Try, Tet, and Pen attempts are all automatically in this top level item here. They're all sub items. Unchecking gear on this list is going to remove it from the strategy tab, which is the tab that's right under this one. In that tab, it kind of tells you what you should be fail stacking on, all the way from 0 to 300 fail stacks, whatever your maximum number is, and what you should be enhancing on from your enhancement list. It just removes it from the strategy. You'll see that some of the items here have a cronstone icon. That's just telling you whether or not you should use cronstones on this piece of gear. Keep in mind that decision relies on the cronstone cost set in the money/settings section. So if you're doing something like buying costumes, adjust the cronstone cost, or just keep it at 2 mil if you don't feel like doing that and you're buying it from the vendor, or do something weird, set it to whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But yeah, make sure that you are aware that when it tells you to use cronstones, that's based off of the cost set in the monies and settings tab for cronstones. Next is the strategy tab. So this is where it's going to take everything that you've entered into the program so far and try and tell you what you should be doing on each fail stack, and it's going to give you a breakdown for each fail stack level, how good or bad a decision would be on that fail stack. So here, a 15 stack, it's telling you to stop using Reblath and transition over and start thinking about doing a duo strength helmet of heave. And that's because the strength helmet of heave is checked on my enhancement list and a sub item for duo, because we're going for pen on the enhancement list, but duo is still there because you're probably not going to get the pen. So it's going to go, back down the try, and then you might not get the tet. You know what I mean? So this is just telling you that if you're in that situation in the future where you're going for duo on your strength helmet of heave again, this 15 stack is probably where you should start doing that. And you could save this stack for that purpose if you wanted to. It's also going to give you how much it would cost to try that out on other pieces of gear. If you want to use your 15 stack for your Tri-Kazarka longsword, it looks like that would be a bad idea because it has a positive cost. Looks like you'd be losing 28.8 mil, relatively speaking, attempting Tri-Kazarka on a 15 stack, which we all know that's probably not a good idea. So that's why it has a positive cost and not like a negative or zero cost. You can use this list to compare different pieces of gear for a fail stack and then pick whether or not you think it's worth it, or just see which decisions are better than other decisions. The loss prevention column is just telling you how close that is to using an optimal fail stack for the item, and whenever the risk is low enough and the opportunity for gain is high enough, then you're going to get a zero or negative cost balance. You can uncheck include save stacks to get a list that just doesn't tell you to save stacks for any of the sub items in the equipment tab. You're basically telling the program fail stack up to a point where I can go for a real enhancement and then do it. This isn't going to override other fail stacks where it would have told you to save, but it's just going to kind of like clean up the interface. You might want to still check the lower fail stacks and see whether or not you can get a zero or negative cost balance for a piece of gear that you're trying to enhance, or you might want to uncheck the sub items on the equipment tab if you want to just take them out of the calculation altogether. Another thing you can do here is you can open the guide overlay window. This is basically going to condense some of the information in the strategy tab and just walk you through steps that you can do right now. And it's supposed to be a smaller window so that you can overlay it on top of the game and use it to get some recommendations from the program of what you should be doing. Right now it says that you must have at least one alt registered to do this. So we have to go back and change some settings in order to get this to come up. And basically what this means is that the program doesn't know how many alts you have. So it doesn't know how many spaces in your naders band that you have. So it might be able to assume that, of course, you have at least one character, but since it doesn't know anything about any of the characters that you have, it kind of just wants you to input that information. So we're going to go and add our alts into the program. So you go back to the settings, monies tab, whatever, and then you can click on manage alts /tunes to add an alt into the program. I'm going to import my alts from my game files because I think that's easier. I want to select the folder here, not the picture. Depending on how your game files are set up, it might not find the right directory, but for me it's in my documents Black Desert /face texture. So there should be a bitmap file here for each of your alts, and it'll just use those bitmap files to enumerate your alts, but it can't get their name or the amount of fail stacks that your alts have, so that part won't be set up. After I selected the folder, you can see that these are all of my alts, and I'm going to just give them basic names like A, B, and C just to get things started. And I don't think that I need a bunch of alts to do this, so I'm going to trim this list down, and I'm going to keep it in that they have one fail stack. And now I can open the guide overlay and it works properly. On the right, you have a list, another list. And this one is basically telling you that you can go for a Tri-Kazarka longsword or Tri-Kazarka longsword. So these are going to be two different ways of attempting Tri-Kazarka right now, and it's going to step you through what you need to do to attempt the enhancement. On the left, you see that you have a number of fail stacks. So this is the amount of fail stacks that you have on your currently selected alt The currently selected alt is below the fail stack spinner. And then below that are 3 checkboxes. The first one, stay on alt. It tries to give you decisions that are only on the alt that you are currently on. Follow track tries to pair decisions up with the same gear. So like if I were to try an enhancement on this Kazark longsword and I would fail, it would go back to duo. And you might want to continue working on this Kazark longsword, so it's going to pick a decision that is for your duo Kazark longsword. So this list could have a lot of different pieces of gear. Right now it only has one because that's just how things are set up. The other pieces of gear don't have a viable decision, so they're not here. But if you have multiple pieces of gear, follow track will just keep you on one of them. And then the stay on top checkbox just prevents the window from going into the background when you click into another program like Black Desert Online. You won't have to keep alt tabbing or something like that. So like the other lists that are like this, you can click on the little expanded arrow at the bottom to take a look at what the steps are in order to attempt this enhancement. So it looks like we're considering the Kazark longsword instead of the duo Griffin helmet at this fail stack level. The program thinks that this is a viable decision, so if you feel comfortable doing that, then you can, it's totally fine. And it says to fail 18 times on your reblath, then fail 3 times on the duo Gruntle, 2 times on try, and then 1 time on tet to get a 47 stack, and then attempt try. So these are the steps. The attempt cost is basically used to weigh different decisions against each other. So it seems that this one is cheaper than the other one. Suppose that we'll go with this one. Hit accept to start stepping through the things that you need to do for this enhancement. You can read the text at the bottom if you want, a bit more clarification on what each one of these steps means, although most of them are pretty self-explanatory. I want to go over some of the other tools and information that you can get in the program here. So the first is in the tools menu option, and then gear types / probability tables, and this is just going to show you your gear types like boss armor, boss weapons, black star weapons, whatever. It's going to show you all of the enhancement levels for that gear type and the probability of succeeding an enhancement on a given fail stack. So you'll see this this grid here, and sections along the top are the gear enhancement level, and the sections vertical are the fail stack level. Click anywhere on the list and you can type in a probability, and it will try to find a section on the list that matches that probability best. So at 10% for Tet Black Star, it seems that a 187 stack is around there. You can also type in the fail stack number to get what its probability would be. Of course, you can change the enhancement level here. So you can click around on the list or change the values on these controls to search through and look for fail stack levels. You can pick the type of gear to change the table. The red sections are when the probability of succeeding starts to go down relative to the difference in probability gain per level starts to go down. We'll see at level 9, 23 fail stacks to 24. Those are both not red, so the difference between them is going to be higher than the difference between 24 and 25. There's also a point where you will not gain any more chance of succeeding, and I think that's around 90%. Next is just a small market tax calculator. It's not like it's difficult to do this anyway, but I don't know, maybe it would be convenient. And the last is just a section that shows you the cached marketplace value for pieces of gear. So if you just wanted to double check something or take a look at what the program is storing in terms of marketplace value, you can just look at that section. In the help menu, there's an about window that'll tell you the version that you're using, and special thanks there and some credits for whatever I'm using there. So that's just kind of information about the program. You can click the GitHub README to open a web browser to the GitHub page, and there's some information there if you want to read it. might help you if you get stuck or something. I don't know. There's also a download updates button there that will take you to the download page where it should have the most recent version. You start the program and it tells you that there's a new version. It might come up at the bottom there when you start the program. In the file menu here, you can save or load info. So that's your settings file. All the data that you input here is saved into a file, of course, so that you don't lose it when you close the program. So you can save your settings file to a special location or load from a special location with those buttons. Or you can open the settings directory. And this is something that you might have to do if you encounter a bug or something like that. I hope that doesn't happen, but you can also take a look at your settings file here if you're curious, or just quickly get access to this folder. There's a log file here, and the log file contains just text output from the program for debugging purposes. So if something goes wrong or something like that, it should print some text into this log file, and that just helps track things, keep track of things. So mine's just cluttered with a bunch of stuff because it's the same log file when I'm debugging the program, and sometimes I just output things, so yours shouldn't look so messy. This is what the settings file looks like. It's a JSON file. I'm not going to get too in depth with what's going on in here. And then there's a section for opening the log file, but we already did that. After you've clicked the magnifying glass and you've calculated the enhancement cost for an item, you can click on the picture again to get some more detailed information about the item and also some basic data about the item in question. So first you'll see two lists here. There's one on the left, one on the right. The one on the left has each level that is relevant to the program for that gear, and it's going to give you what the marketplace cost is for it if you've updated that, the amount of cronstones that are needed to attempt an enhancement with cronstones on that level. The cumulative cost is just adding up the cost from, well, here it's starting at 8, I believe, all the way up until that point. You can use this cumulative cost section to add up all of the costs of each of the enhancement levels, and the material cost is the same as the same idea as the material cost from the equipment tab as well. And you'll see things like durability and materials. Those are pretty much self-explanatory. I'll tell you how much durability you lose when you fail and what materials you need to attempt the enhancement. Clicking on an item, the list to the left populates the list on the right, and that's going to give you, for that enhancement level, so we pick try, on each one of these fail stack levels, what would be the cost of succeeding the enhancement using that fail stack. So you'll see that at first they'll be more expensive, then they'll get less expensive, and then they'll get more expensive because the fail stack cost is going up as you increase fail stacks. But of course your probability of failing and then incurring the cost of getting back to try is higher on lower fail stacks. Going over some of the optimizer settings, a lot of these you probably won't ever have to use or edit, but the first is the number of processes. This just depends on your CPU. If it can handle more than 4 and you don't feel like waiting quite as long, go ahead and try and bump it up. 4 is a pretty safe number, that's why I picked it. You can probably go higher. You can change the target fail stack because the strategy is going to be different if you are specifically targeting a lower fail stack. Let's say, for example, you might want to set a target fail stack for 120 or 130, something around there, maybe even in the 200s. If you are attempting gear around that specific fail stack and you're going to build a fail stack specifically to get to something like 250, but you also want some general target fail stack solutions in there, you don't have to do that for every piece of gear because it would be totally annoying. These other things that you can change down here, just kind of change how the algorithm works. It's a genetic algorithm. You probably don't care at all, but that's what they do for now. I'm surprised you made it this far, but I can't knock you for that considering the excessive amount of time I've spent on this project. I've enjoyed the time that I spent though, and I hope at least some of you find it useful. I have a couple of things I want to add in post after editing the video. First off, if you have any questions, suggestions, or anything like that, feel free to hit me up here on YouTube, GitHub, or whatever. This is just a small project that I made for myself and kept adding to it, so it's certainly not the most polished thing in the world. That being said, I've double-checked a lot of the math to make sure that I didn't do anything too stupid. There's a lot more that I could say, but this video is already too long, so I'm going to end it. Take it easy.